Yeah. Looks like you're doing well. I'm smiling.
There's no rain, right?
Yeah.
So.
Right. Tell me about it.
Great, like, I'm tired of this rain. I went on a vacation, it was 90 degrees, and I came back and it was raining. I went,
Is that what's bad?
It's not right.
No.
Breathe, we're entertaining.
This is my tank. I was really thankful. I don't think, I say the rain.
Okay, everyone, welcome. This is our budget meeting here. I'd like to get roll. Madam Clerk, roll, please.
Mr. Malloy.
Here.
Mr. Bernard.
Here. Here. Okay, so the reason for calling this meeting is to see where currently we are, and we have many departments coming to us for additional funding. And the commissioners definitely appreciate all that are here to assist us with this budget. I suppose, I think we should start with the auditor's office, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, does it make sense to start with the auditor?
I guess we can start with a question if you want. From the reports that you send us after your budget commission meetings, if you look at the last couple of months, it looks like it had real numbers and then it had auditors' projections of what we were making per month. It looks to me, when I look at this charts, that we are trending at about, we brought in about $1 million more as of now than what we projected we were going to bring in. Now, if that was with a dip in one month, but an uptake in other months, is that correct or not?
Are you talking about the sales tax?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, on sales tax.
That's not.
I know the auditor was being very conservative when she gave us those numbers initially. We appreciate that. But to me, it looks like we may have $1 million more than what we were
Pass these out
projecting.
and then, the second document in this budget has the sales tax analysis through May 21st, 2025. That's when we received the latest sales tax receipts. And then, yes, based on what we estimated January through May, we received excess of 1.1.
So we made more in every month
Yes.
than the 5 months, as much as I see 317,000.
What wasn't February less?
Yes.
Yes.
Prior year versus actual was less. If you look over to the left, what we received in February 2025 was less than what we received in February 2020.
But what we projected we were gonna make was more. But we
Projection, I
budget on.
agree,
Yes,
but not actual dollars.
Correct.
Business.
yes.
But we based our budget on the projections we have.
Okay, I'm just,
That's why.
when you stated it, you stated actual, you didn't state project. That's what I
Okay, I
meant.
apologize for that.
That's-
All right.
Okay, so with all that in mind, the commissioner, you brought up, we're at $1 million. Is this monies that now are available to appropriate to these departments? In excess?
It's when this in the sales tax that was not budgeted.
Now, we granted. The next quarter or the next half, money could go down,
Correct.
so it'd be irresponsible to spend it before we see a full projection.
Yes, we
Well,
did suggest still being conservative, but yes, in the past, we've used that excess money throughout the year for small capital projects.
Yeah, yeah, the entire
Yes.
year was used for capital improvements.
But that's up to the board as to whether they want to use it for small capital
But
projects.
technically-
The budget.
But technically, we got 1.18 more than what we anticipated.
That today's date.
As I said, if this keeps trending in that same thing for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months.
Yeah.
We could potentially, if it trends the same. We could be at $2.5 million or $3 million more than what we anticipated, which pays for a 911 center and half of the court and all the renovations at the fire department.
I disagree. We cut our budget, what, $2 to $3 million for utilities. Where are we gonna get the money for that?
Well, I understand, I'm just saying it could,
Well, yeah, I mean, you could, but
if we budgeted correctly.
yeah, but, I mean, we're short in our utility account right now, probably what, $2 million?
I don't know if it's quite that, it's not that heavy, but it's like I'm already having to find money to put in for some overages that I've already been paying out, so.
At the end of the day, commissioners, the only thing that I want to make sure that you look at is,
Name it.
I'm so sorry, Alex Stephen Jones, Special Needs Department. When you guys left this process, you left multiple officers, entities, elected officials short in what they just even asked for operating expenses. So it is not my budget, it is your budget. But what I'm saying is here is if you can't even fund payroll and or operating expenses for these 5 entities, and I made you all aware, the commissioners were cut short, the prosecutor's office were cut short, that's now being taken care of, so we'll take that off the auditor's office was cut short. The sheriff's office was cut short, the county clerks was cut short, I'm sorry, county courts was cut short, the municipal courts was cut a little short. And the Board of Elections was cut short.
What about maintenance?
Well, maintenance is included in the commissioner's budget, which is going to be detrimental short. So I'm just gonna be honest with you. So you knew that going in, you chose to do that. So what I wouldn't say, I mean, I just wanna, I'm not gonna tell you what to do or not to do, but you need to be aware of that any money that's potentially left over, first and foremost, I would assume should go to operating costs. I mean, before we making sure your employees can stay employed, making sure we can pay health insurance, making sure we can pay their salaries, making sure that we can, and if we don't do that, then we can't provide services. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I mean, we did, we are operating our departments at a shortfalls, all of them. This is good news here. I think, Commissioner, as far as capital expenditure, we could look at, another way to fund those
I
things.
agree, she just said that traditionally that was used for
Right.
capital expenditures.
Yes,
Oh,
but we did have enough money.
There was enough money for the
other sales
operating.
tax to pay for the
yeah.
operating, we didn't have an operating.
Right.
That's a very.
When
good
we did that, and I just kind of meant that we could use it throughout the year for others.
The other
We
thing,
didn't wait till year end.
what I did want to do, I'll get this out of the way real quickly, because we did dig into a rainy day. Well, the carryover, what we call rainy.
For the reserves, the reserve fund.
That's the technical name for it. So I'm still unclear about those amounts. I remember that we were at 12%. That
Oh,
we had
that
how
we were
many?
supposed, I believe it was 13.
I think it was 13.
13%?
Yeah.
What was the number that do we know what's in there now?
Marcia, that was on
Okay.
Yoder was looking into that, and you were supposed to have so many months of
Right.
operating expenses in reserve.
Right,
Which we still do, we're still over that number, but I know we didn't tap into that.
I believe it was just barely over that number, if we were right line.
Page 3 shows the general fund and the fund related to the general fund. It shows their ending balance at the end of the meeting.
page 3.
Those are emails to you guys that I did from.
Oh, page-
Page number thousands.
yeah. And where is it?
Up here at the top, these are the funds related to the general fund. So here's the general fund, shoot to the ending balance at the end of the month. And then, this is sales tax, justice sales tax, like in there. And
So
then-
this is our current ending balance of all.
That's why we.
I think the first thing, commissioners, that we need to look at is where we're going with the departments. Because we know they're coming. And what we have in excess or what we can contribute to that. I mean, it is good news that we're looking at, $1.1 million. In addition, to work with.
But I would stress this, that's a possibility, also a possibility of what's gonna happen.
Right. Right.
We're not even 6 months in. It's a possibility. That shortfall. Over.
If that's the case, can we, I mean, will we be able to dig into the general fund carryover monies any further? Has it happened in the past?
That part I don't know, but that is a commissioner decision to, you know.
If we look at the estimate. If it trends even near the same, even if we didn't hit our estimates. On most of the months, we could still be over the actual of last year, or where we were with the actual of last year.
And Cher, correct me if I'm wrong, but we really haven't hit the excess sales tax yet for any capital projects.
No.
We're using the third of course money, so.
The- Yeah, the only money that we took out of sales tax was when I transferred it was for the properties with Zach, which we're getting the majority of that back, 100%. It's all that we've used out of sales tax, that's all. I have not touched
So
sales tax.
unlike years past, we haven't. Excess is still there.
And typically that's what we have, we've had to do it.
And we're still making money, some interest off of the money that's still sitting there. Also, right? There's that
Oh,
calculated.
there's interest made, correct.
Sorry about that.
We cut 2 mil out of the or out of the commissioners.
I thought it was 2, but somebody told me they cut us 3. And I have to cover certain things. These municipal contracts, you know, for the prosecutorial services for the cities. There's just different things. Muni courts, we cover a portion of, we have to give them a supplement for their compensation, for their health insurance, that kind of thing. So there's little things that people don't, just like when we transport prisoners, that falls on the commissioners. There are things that we don't have a choice, we have to cover these.
Do we have a number where,
Yeah, commissioners, the original ask for the commissioner's budget was 11.5.
And I was conservative with that,
Right.
as it was. I mean, I did not have that.
I mean, I had said 10.5 would have been realistic, but the board of commissioners cut it to 9.3.
1.3?
We operated, I just want to be extremely clear, last year's operating amount was 10.3, which is why I said even 10.5, we're still being conservative compared to, you know, everything.
So we're about $1 million down where we were the year prior.
But we have also cut back on some personnel hiring and overtime
Well, we cut,
from that number.
yeah, I mean, off the top, Sharon and I sat down with Daryl and Harlan and cut $2 million off the maintenance budget off the top. I mean, now I'm not saying that's ideal. I
It's
mean,
not.
we're not gonna have, you know, money for projects, you know, come that latter half of the year, which we're starting to see. But
Or emergencies.
Well, they've also.
there's some, but I don't know where else you'd want.
Daryl indicated to me that buildings are starting to suffer with just maintenance things that they just don't have money for.
Yeah.
So that is also a concern. We have to take care of.
But I think I wanna go back to specifically when you look at mandates versus what's necessary. I mean, I hate to say that, but commissioners, we have to pay health, we have to pay insurance premiums, we have to pay Corsa, we have to pay property, we have to pay auto, we have to pay liability, we have to pay, you know, errors and omissions. We have to pay utilities. So that's how I think you really need to start to look at all of this holistically moving forward is. So yeah, where you do begin to cut is capital improvements. That's it. Those are nice to haves. Yeah, of course, we all want them, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to operate.
Got to have the lights on.
That's what I'm saying. So if
No, and I agree with you.
you really need to kind of start to target it at that approach. And then beyond that, I would suggest from an HR perspective, what personnel do you absolutely need? Because again, if we're not, if these entities don't have the people to provide the services that are mandated, we're gonna have serious concerns. So I'm not saying we're there, I'm just saying, you know, before you go throw money at something else, make sure you really went back and revisited where you cut, why you cut it, do you need to fund that? And
We're definitely not gonna, we're not gonna look at any capital expenditures with these money.
No, but we do have to look, Commissioners, we do have to look at the coroner right now. I mean, 911, they're okay where they are. Horrible conditions, but they're functioning like they did for 20 years. The dog pound, horrible conditions, but they're functioning. The coroner, we're not even in the summer yet, and he's already staking out the building where our EMA has to leave and they're working in a garage. So we cannot overlook that that's somebody's family member that is in there getting an autopsy done in a garage, like a guy during deer season in his back garage with a deer. We can't have that. And we have an option now, while the weather is good, to move John Hickey to another facility for 300,000 or whatever it is, and at least start to alleviate that issue where he can still function without having to leave his office because of the smell, and then integrating the coroner into and inside the building and not in the garage, and then working on whatever it costs later to retool ventilation and all that type of stuff we need to do. But at the bare minimum, we have to figure out what is our priority that has to be done. We're talking, we have to pay the electric, we have to put the lights on, like you said. We know in June, we're gonna see the massive increase, everyone's gonna see in electric. We haven't seen that yet. So we know that's coming. So we gotta be cautious of that. But what is our next priority here, moving forward? Not looking back, moving forward, what is our most pressing demand right now? To me, it's finding a place for the coroner to do his job. We got a highest paid employee in the county that's working under conditions that he can leave tomorrow. And then where are we? Then we're coming back and paying for autopsies to be done in Cleveland and other places. Guess where that money's coming from?
So the move 300,000, I mean, is Hickey good with that?
Hickey said he will move that other facility if it's upgraded to his needs, and 300,000 is the number that was thrown out.
Well, we need to find out if we can use that ARP money. That's left
I
over.
don't know about that yet either.
Right, and, supposedly last week letters were supposed to go out to Marino, Houston, and them in the Treasury Department, asking for the answer if we can reallocate that money.
Yeah, we all have not gotten together. I got no response from the attorney yet, and
Well, forget the
we're-
attorney, I think we need to go directly to Washington and get the answer. because
Well, we were supposed to get answers back. Did you ask that question when you were there?
I did ask the question, I was there,
I don't know
We
what
were
you-
also supposed to send letters too, right?
that's what we'd asked for, yes. And
So those letters.
we were told also,
I-
Mike Hollick is one of the guys too. He said, call him in Columbia and he'll tell you what they did and it was legal and what their attorney stuff.
You did do this. That's right. Never mind.
So-
That's okay.
Well, the key is, I mean, if we could use that money, then. Bruce,
It's like crickets right now,
yeah,
right?
it's just,
It's like crickets. Nobody's really responding either way.
Nobody is.
well,
They're not answering.
I mean, if we could get that answer, I mean, there's plenty of money there that we could use for that.
Well, there's money sitting there now that we know could be used just based off what's left over from the command vehicle. So that could be adapted to
Even the
that.
accountant, there's a whole bunch left on the accountant's purchase order, and I really don't need them at this point.
We don't know whether we can use it, right?
Right.
Well,
I guess we need to start making the
what
phone
happens if we
calls.
use it? The bottom line is we have to pay it back, right?
Mike Hollick said that they've got what their attorney's advice, and he said, if you guys having a problem doing it, call me, I'll get you my attorney's opinion. That's what Columbiana did.
Well, that's the easiest move, and that's.
Not the prosecutor, but who are using for their.
The only problem about
Purpose.
moving him out there is then we run into that tower problem. He doesn't have a tower.
Yeah, but he said that can be moved. That's not an issue. You know, that's gonna restrict him.
What can be moved? Sure. There is,
There's no tower there. That's the engineer's tower.
yeah, there is no. He would have to do a water tower,
Yes.
hopper.
Hopper off of.
Sorry, it's not my,
Yeah.
it's not my wheel, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's my wheelhouse, it's not.
Yeah.
And he was assuming that it would be able to use the Cortland's water tower, which is across the lake, so it would have to, he was assuming all that needs to be looked at, that's the reality.
What's something like that cost?
A new tower, we
No,
know
not the new tower.
Oh, and he'd also talked to top of the grandstand too. They can utilize the top of the grandstand.
It's not much, it's just straight antenna going from one to the other. I couldn't tell you the cost right now, but it's not that.
He said it was minimal, but he said it was if it would work or not,
If
was
it
the,
would work
yes,
is
like it's the
question,
proximity
yes.
of, that's the big.
Now, we had
Yeah.
looked at, last year, putting a tower out there. And we were looking at about 1.5
Yeah.
to 2 mil just for that tower. And then that doesn't include the upkeep on the tower. So,
Of which, so we would recoup from what was told then, within 3 years, we can recoup our investment off of Verizon, T-Mobile and AT&T.
I'm not sure if it's 3 years or not, but there would be a cost, we could potentially lease that tower space out.
There was also, just as a reminder, I don't know what happened with it, but we did a small business loan through ARPA funds. They're getting paid back. I don't know if they've collected interest. I don't know anything about that project.
And don't forget too, that command vehicle is gonna act as a tower itself.
Did that well, yes.
Because they said that will have capability to communicate throughout the whole
So you
county.
could use that for communication?
They can use that. That's what it's there for. That's why we bought it.
That's interesting.
Is it, well, where's it gonna be housed? So yes, it would make sense if it's gonna be housed if it's at a fire station. As long as it's in the again, we're talking about proximity. That's all we're saying. So if he's going to use that as his hotspot, so to speak, then the vehicle and vehicle needs to be placed there. Did anybody look at that?
Yeah, that's, they looked at the base, and the only thing he needed to do was get with the county engineer, who David and Christopher said, he would have his guys look at the parking lot, the driveway, to see if the driveway needed done, and possibly have his guys do it
The driveway at the,
at the fire department.
okay.
It's
Unfortunately,
okay now, but it needs repair.
unfortunately, Director Hickey is out, she did tell us about. And that was my concern was, I think you guys need to get a meeting with him and really, if you're looking to talk about this option, really get to not I think or feel or I heard, just get to the nuts.
We did, we had a meeting out there, with our maintenance department and his EMA board and the three of us.
So,
Does the command vehicle,
Funds,
does the command vehicle fit in that garage?
it does.
Oh,
Well, the
wow.
only problem is the sheriff has equipment in there.
Yeah, he does.
With the sheriff out.
Okay, so it does sound like there's some things.
Just
to be
about.
tightened.
But I think the sheriff, if you're gonna use command post for radio, then the sheriff's stuff could go to the engineer's garage in Cortland.
Or we have Panther, we just cleared out 30 some cars out of Panther. We had that whole parking lot that was the sheriff's department
I think they were there.
storage area.
It's their boats. I don't think they're gonna want their boats out.
So we'd have to use the engineer's garage in Cortland.
They used to be stored over at Panther back in a long time ago. There was a decrepit garage attached outside, not attached to the vehicle maintenance garage, but kind of, it was, but there was the boats and all the jet skis and ski-doos and all that was lost in. The whole reason that had to get was because that had to get torn down because it was so decrepit, and honestly, there was stuff falling on the boats anyways, because the roof was gone. And that's how everything got moved, just so for historical context.
And the other thing is tags over there also. So if we're gonna make that a coroner's office, tag needs to be moved too.
No, when we refit that building for proper ventilation and fluid, it won't affect tag, there won't be the smell. We can't put those renovations in it now, because that would be inside, and that's money we'd be dumping in the building that we don't have for the coroner right now. But once we refit that building, they have a ventilation system that'll work.
Yeah, but if you spend 300 to move EMA and then you have tags still in there, they're still in the same problem with the corner in there, right?
Technically, but they're not, the tag's not complaining and bailing out on the smell. They haven't left.
A little bit they are. That's their problem.
I mean, at some
And
point
that's
they-
when I said, maybe we can move tag to Chestnut Street. Go with Dulles Fort, Chestnut Street.
I just think the nature of tag, they like to be covert, out of sight and not have their vehicles monitored and.
I mentioned it to them, they said they would look at it, and they haven't gotten back to me yet. You know, but they did say that if the coroner's office goes in there, that smell, something has to be done there with them.
Well, our options, we're talking about a few different things, getting back into this, moving the 300,000 and we only got so much to go around.
Well, the key is we need to see if we can use that money.
The ARPA.
No answers.
Well, when are we gonna find out about that? Cause these departments are gonna come to.
When one thing breaks loose, that's gonna cause the other stuff, to chain reaction to break loose. And right now, we're at a standstill. Just waiting, like that bulldozer game that pushes the quarters over. We're waiting for something to just happen so that we can pile on with the rest of the needs we have, We're afraid to put our first toe in the water right now is part of the problem.
We need to keep talking to Washington, looking for an answer. They need to get back to us right away.
But if they don't, and we have
Well,
resources to work with, what are we gonna do with the departments? Cause you got the Board of Elections on our buck, we need money in the commissioner's office, what other departments are? The auditor's office needs money.
well, we're
We're gonna
not
have to-
spending any of that money yet. This is all extra money. I mean, I agree with Commissioner Malloy. I mean, the prosecutor, the coroner's office, something has to be done.
Oh, I don't disagree with
It's gotta
that,
be
but this
done now.
weather, everything that we're having, it's gonna get crazy. So, but
I mean,
do we have numbers to know where the departments are at or what they're asking for? What's the auditor asking for?
We were 400,000 short.
Yeah, it was
Could
cut, it was,
Yes,
your request was 3.7 some.
correct. Now, we were actively, Martha and I have been sitting down almost a week, going over the numbers, trying to figure out exactly what we can cut. A lot of it's gonna be IT expenses. That's the painful part of all this.
Fortunately, the majority of our other expenses are payroll related.
And everything else is payroll. So we're trying to figure out what work with the union, trying to talk to them, trying to come up with some ideas of what we're gonna do if we don't have that money, don't have this. So it's a big concern for us, right?
So we don't have any numbers with the auditor yet.
Not yet, nothing concrete. We just know what we started out with, we're shortfall.
Right.
But like I said, we're the big area without touching payroll right now is gonna be IT, and it's gonna start affecting everybody. It's gonna start affecting our services here by the end. And like I said, it's IT and payroll. So it's not one cancels out the other, both are gonna be affected, and we just need to figure out what we're gonna do.
When do we see, like, we have up till May's projection, when will we see June's? Is it almost immediate at the end of the month, or is it a month behind, or
It
how?
usually comes in around the 18th of the month. That's why this spreadsheet has May 21st, because that was right around when it came in, when I did the update on the spreadsheet, did the receipt.
So in another week or so, we should be able to see where we are for June, to see if it's still trending up. That'll give us a half year's data at least.
What was the Board of Elections asked? Over,
I think 275.
257.
Yeah, something like that.
Don't quote me.
Yeah, I think she's right.
Actually, I did plug it in just to be certain. The Board of Elections.
Cindy came in at 170, but she wants to do higher, I don't know if that's gonna be doable.
Board of Elections asked originally for 2.071.
2.07.
They were awarded 1.6. And I just did what people came back and asked, just as of last week, I went to 1.63. I know it was 257, but I just rounded to the 300,000. I mean, you could take it, but yeah, so they did ask for 257,000.
What was
Yeah, they
then?
got a grant or something.
What was the,
So that covered part of it. but
170.
Yeah,
but then she added some on, because she said she wanted a higher.
Well, that was where she needs to get to the end of the year now, between 150 and 170.
recorder's any 1.15 was her initial ask. She was awarded 1.1, so she was short again, also short. What I have is that she was at 1.25, asking for an additional 250,000, but I don't know if that's right or wrong.
I think she's at 150, I think.
Okay.
150, like bare minimum, she would like 200,
Yes.
150 would get her to the end of the
That's
year.
what she asked.
And we get, the parks. We should talk about that. They cut back, they asked for 130 at the beginning of the year. We cut them in half, but then they saved, they put them on 4-day work week, so there should be a savings in that if they did the same thing and continued on with what they're doing into the winter months, they should be able to survive on a little less than the last call school.
I mean, we cut them the heaviest of 50%.
Well, we cut them half of what they needed, but if we give them, make them whole, they've already cut back for half a year and should save money.
So you're not proposing the 65?
Oh my God.
What are you talking, 50?
Well, I think we need to ask them what they need to.
I think they're at 65.
Well, they asked for 65, which did make sense to me when 65 would get them through a half year normally, but they said they made cutbacks. They cut services, so where's that extra money?
Well, let's reach out to them and see what they say.
Yeah. What about the clerk? Did we hear anything from clerk reports lately? What was the clerk cut? Alex, do we have that number?
The clerk's initial original ask was 2.6, they were awarded 2.4. I don't know.
Why are mine? This month.
Sure, what do you think we're gonna need?
Well, I'm sorry, I was looking at county courts, she's right. 1.4 was their initial ask, 1.25 was the award, so either way, they were still,
Two some.
yeah. Let me get a hold.
I know, I can't really say exactly what we're needing because we keep getting all these like, I just don't expect these prisoner transports and some of the ones that we've had have been extremely expensive because they're coming to the Parkway. Texas is a long way to go, so they charge us. One was exorbitantly high, but it was because he had a medical condition that required that when he traveled with him, they were medically trained or whatever the case may be. But these seem to be popping up, and I had not really budgeted for US prisoner transport. Prosecutor's office was always able to help us at least with a little bit. I mean, we always got stuck, but we've had more with the end of last year and what we've got this year. Now, so far, I've not had any more. I'm crossing my fingers that I don't have any more, and I might not. So then that last $3,600 would be like the last for at least this year, and I'm hoping that we keep it that way. But I can't. If I had a crystal ball, it would make life so much easier. But right now, we're all digging for money and transferring, and I know Christy sees it because we have to put it through the auditor's office. I have to transfer from this line item to this line item just to pay for this. So. Right.
Sam, how are you looking?
We're okay. It's hard for me to
You're leaving.
answer. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
We are set up to be okay. There is a empty position in my office that I am not filling. That's going to be hard on the new treasurer, though. HR director will stand up behind me and say that she don't get much complaints about me, but I do jobs of the office that I don't know how long that's going to be allowed. In defense of the employees, when I do work that a union employee is supposed to be doing, that's what keeps my budget down, but that keeps them working. So my staff is satisfied with that, but how long they stay satisfied with that? I mean, I got a great staff, they're great people, they're understanding of that. They're happy that they're working and that they're not hearing that, but I've taken steps. I didn't attend our spring conference. I sent the treasurer-elect to the spring conference. I can't justify spending money to send me to the spring conference. I had established enough training hours preceding the spring conference that the state exempted me from having to attend because I have the training hours. So I tried to save, I try to save dollars in any place, in any shape that we can. But, I mean, I think I'm the only one in the room. Yeah, well, no, you weren't even here yet either, so I've lived this already, and it was not fun at all when we lived this years ago. I mean, my staff, at the time I was office manager, we established we only worked 32 hours a week. With the younger employees, they worked 32 hours a week, so their pay was cut by 8 hours. The older employees, every 2 weeks, we were laid off for a week. So, I mean, that went on for 11 months. That was probably the 11th hardest of my time here. It was very trying, and it's hard. It's hard to understand, but I know that we see problems every day, and that we have to continue to work forward. So what I'm saying is the answer I should have gave you is the treasurer's office is satisfied and okay, but I mean, there are more empty desks in that office than there are covered desks. And what that means is that office was designed for a certain capacity, that there are 9 employees and 12 empty desks. So that's it in a nutshell, and we're operating fine. I do believe that if I was staying, and many of you have heard me throw this pitch, that I was on a pitch for a while to put in automatic machinery to take a kiosk of some nature to take payments and everything. And I was on that pick for a while, and it ran away from me because just about everybody carries a kiosk in their pocket. It's just called a telephone. So they could just about do everything with that telephone that the kiosk could do. But that might be a thought for the future treasurer to look at placing a kiosk in that office, because then when an employee of cashier capability is not available, the treasurer doesn't have to become the cashier. You have the kiosk machine there. Machines don't get retirement, they don't get life insurance, they don't get hospitalization. So I hate to say it, because I like all of my employees, and I think they do an outstanding job. And I wish I had the other 11 desks full with other employees, because that keeps the county moving too, to employ people. It's the reality of life is that my heart goes out to you, gentlemen. You have some other problems. In government life, I see buildings suffer all the time, and you are seeing the proof of it. Government buildings have a tendency of suffering, and I've seen it for all of the years I've been here and the years I was in the city of Girard. It seems like the buildings get put off, and then you're in horrible situations. But our major cost is employee costs, folks. I mean, we're sitting here struggling trying to come up with budget numbers. It's because of employee costs.
What percentage of our total budget is for employees?
That would be a question for the auditor to answer, but my guess would be 83%, Christie.
I think we haven't done anything this year, but last year when we were looking at it, I would say per department, they were 70 to 85%.
Yeah, I usually say
Depending on the
department
department.
to 80, but I will say the only caveat to that, just to be very clear, is the sanitary department who their bulk cost is actually flip, which is the water. But they're the only one that I have found thus far in my research that has that caveat. Everybody else is usually 70-80% employee costs, yes.
Especially general fund.
Yep.
And how much has that gone up over the last 5-6 years, do you know?
Well, I mean, I could tell you all the increases for every single contract over the past 5-6 years.
Just, like what it was and 6 years ago, what was the total cost and what's the total cost?
What
2 years ago. So what, 23 to 24, health insurance itself went up 14%. Last year to this year, health insurance went up 10%.
You know, but I just would like, we could, a comparison, I like. It's,
When I came in the government world in the city of Gerard, we were at an employee cost of about 47% was the employee cost factor
And what year was that, Sam?
in 1993.
Yeah.
When I left the city of Gerard in 2000 to come to the county, they were at 89%.
Yep. It's,
The graph, in my mind, the graph of employee cost is there, but it's kind of leveled over the last 11 to 10 years, but it's a big number to be leveled. I mean, I was a little high in guesstimating the counties, not that much.
and it leveled to treasurers, because there was a 7-year, I know that the county had years where they were not able to give any sort of increase, not for unions, but for non-bargaining staff. But what that then does is it could be detrimental to your workforce, because what that then does is the union employees are making more than your administrators, and what kind of administrators are you gonna keep? No offense, but I'm just gonna be honest with you. And that is,
In 05, we also, the unions did freeze in 05 as well.
they agree.
Right, but it was a
Yeah.
freeze then
But
too.
there was many
But-
years where we got I mean, there was
Right.
just zero.
Well, 5
And
through
then we
9,
went
5.
20 cents,
I get
30
it.
cents, and it was that way for a really long time.
So we're not in a horrible situation here right now. Let's
The world
Spin
isn't
the narrative
ending.
a
No,
little
I
bit.
don't.
that we're not in those types of scenarios. We're not looking at furloughing anybody. We're not looking at union freezes or anything. We are doing.
I brought that up complimenting you, to be very truthful with you, that I.
And Sam, appreciate that. I just
Have to live it again is what.
I just don't want the media and anyone to portray Trumbull County's broke, we're in dire straits, we can't pay our employee. We're not in that situation. We're finding now that we're actually in a better situation, as I had hoped when we got into this budget hearings back in the fall. We're in a better situation than we thought we were. And nobody's getting laid off yet. As of yet, no one's been laid off. And there were talks of it, there were talks of that and lawsuits and everything else. We're not at that point. We're not looking at the doomsday scenario that Sam's lived and many people in this room have lived. By any means, we're not in that. And we know things are gonna be better as these new businesses are coming here. Our future is bright. We just gotta get over this little hump to get there.
Well, I just penciled it, and I don't want this to be held against me because I always like to double check my figures, but it would be like to make everyone have what they requested, it'd be $837,600.
Oh, what I posted, on
So,
I was just doing some figures here.
I'm just gonna throw us speaking for the auditor's office. You know, I mentioned, well, the shortfall that we have, it's IT and payroll. You know, we are constantly looking at that. If we don't get some level of relief, we're gonna be looking at that scenario. I hate
And
to say
Sheena
it.
said we got 800,000 will take care of all the problems. And we got
that
one
and that
point
includes you guys for
more
360.
right now.
And we understand what you guys are saying, and that's like a promise, but for us, we're concerned if we don't have that budget in our records by a certain time, we would need to make adjustments, because we also don't want to be the department that gets at the end of the year and we're over budget. You guys say, oh, well, it didn't work out the way we thought it was, and we didn't make any concessions in our office. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think.
What is that time? What is that? What, I mean, what is that time?
It's,
I think
Is it-
we're encroaching on
We're
the time.
That's now.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
We are.
We are.
So when you're talking about, if you're talking about laying people off, I'm not saying that's where we're at this point. I don't wanna panic anybody, but you also, there's, HR will say there's costs that go along with that.
There
It's not just the, we're not just losing that. We still have to pay part of their health insurance. We still have to pay unemployment. So it's not just that, oh, we let a person go and there's frees up all that money. It doesn't free up as much money as you would think that it would, because of all those other costs that need to be paid.
Now, that I understand, but I think we're at the point now where the departments
We need
are
to
gonna
get
have
that.
to, they're gonna have to look at their list. And you're gonna have to come up with some, at least conservative numbers to get to the commissioners, including the commissioner's office.
I didn't include us. This
I know you
is-
didn't, I know you didn't,
This is
but-
all that.
but what I'm saying is,
So-
well, that's why I say a minimum of
To
$1 million.
note that, right, because that didn't include what the
I know.
3 million that was, 3 million that was cut.
I know, but
Three.
But
well, I
but
think
it's,
the commissioners can agree, we're gonna end up needing these numbers, and then we're gonna have to sit back down like we did in the beginning of the year, and
When
we're
I-
gonna have to crunch these numbers again.
but what they're needing in their budgets now is we need to increase their budget.
I understand it, and that's why I'm saying that's why the departments need to get their pen and paper and start crunching the numbers. But again, you know, to what you need to not have to get to that point, well, just like we said before of layoff, right? Just before the point of layoff.
But, and that's what I brought up too, no offense, Phil, but that's what we did a little earlier. He said 120 would get us where he needs it would be. 300, they can add people. We can't be saying add people right now, in my opinion. I wouldn't ask the auditor or any department or any department.
But I want to be clear about that, Commissioner, because, you know, what you guys had tried to do, unfortunately, and what we keep talking about is, you know, more of these kind of, well, nobody can do this, everybody has to do that. Those categorical things are not how these are permitted by law to budget. You know, the fact is, you know, some departments have mandated functions that mandated to be performed by, you know, not necessarily a number of people, but you have to budget a sufficient staff to do it. There are other departments that have non-mandated functions. So when you say, you know, we can't let anybody add, that's not really true, because sometimes some departments have to add to be able to perform those mandated functions. Other times, other departments can't add if it's at the expense of another mandate. So I just want to be clear on that, you know, when we talk about nobody can add, you cannot be categorical about it, because it's not that easy. If this was a corporation where every department in the corporation has to take a 10% cut, that's one thing, but that's not the way that counties budget. And it's a, you know, so again, I'm not arguing with you. I appreciate what you've done for our
We
office.
saved 2 jobs in your department. There were grants that you lost, so those guys would
Well-
have been gone had we not done that.
That is true. That is true. What I would say though is those are positions we've had in the past too, that were paid for by that grant most
And
recently.
the
But-
grant was gone. We absorbed that.
So, well, yeah, but again, what I would say is that I think you guys, I think that you guys need to really focus on that, because if you are getting to the point where you've got offices saying, we're gonna have furloughs, we're gonna have layoffs, you know, that's something you really have to look at what those duties are. And, you know, again, I think, you know, if you're saying that, you know, you didn't want to fund the 2 positions in our office, thankfully you did. But just because they were most recently paid with a grant, that doesn't mean those aren't mandated jobs and mandated positions. So I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but you know, it's not as easy as just everybody has to do one thing or the other.
Well, unfortunately, though I do think they do need to they do need to get down to the weeds of that. I've been saying this, I'm sorry, there's just no other, you're looking at high level numbers. What you're not looking at is the day-to-day operations that go with those high level numbers. You're not looking at line levels. When we look at budgets, so you're seeing here a 9.3 commissioner's budget, the reality is that's a 20-page document with down to a line level of what goes into each line level. So at the end of the day, we're 6 months in. We really need, this is just and I'm gonna let it go. Payroll. We know what payroll is gonna cost now. We have 6 months. Every department head, office holder, elected official can take the next 6 months and forecast it and know what you need for payroll. That should be your first step. What do we need for payroll? Everybody's sitting here and shaking their heads, which means to me, I know that you know that we can calculate that by now. That should be your first step. Go back to the departments, go back to the office heads, go back to the elected officials. Where are we at to get us through these next 6 months with payroll? Then look at that number, start from there. That's where I would.
And I'd say, just in the spirit of that, we don't want to encourage adding employees just because we have an extra million here. You know, we don't want, don't say nobody. There's a sheriff's department right now, so there's a new administrator they want to bring in the jail. There's other positions out there they'd like to fill
I can't.
in other
speak to-
departments, and we need to just be cognizant of we've done a good job in the first 6 months of making it to this point. And if we can take care of the shortage that we had at the beginning, then we did our jobs. As public employees, then we did our jobs. We don't want waste. People want skinny government, they want efficient government. We're doing that, and we do need to mandate the services that we can provide the best services for the citizens. But at the same time, we don't wanna, if it's not in our budget, we don't wanna add people there because it looks like we have more money or, well, this department did it, so we're gonna add somebody. We can't be there. Yes.
Christy Sarah, Auditor's Office. We do provide a revenue and expense summary at the end of each month. So one of the things that could be done with the June summary report is look at that and see the payroll expenses that are at the 50%, over the 50%, below.
And many of them.
Maybe they estimate, see if we can maybe adjust from there too, with the ones that are below the 50%, because they could be right around 50%. Right at that time. I mean, I kind of did something similar with our revenue and got attached, but we can definitely do that with the expense side too.
And like Sam said, if he's below, if he's at 40%, but he's functioning okay, and like you said, his department is functioning okay with that. That doesn't mean go hire more people, get to your 50%. If he can do that, we need all departments to look within themselves to see how they can function the same way. Very good question.
We also need, no, well, what we need to keep in mind too, and we discussed it earlier, if these cuts come from the property taxes, we're
Well,
gonna,
they're not coming this year.
That's next year.
Next year.
That is next year. budget.
but I mean, still, we're looking at all these different items,
I think the thing we have to cautious ourselves on, we're just looking at payroll expenses, and I keep bringing it up, we got utility costs that we really slashed our budget on. And, that's why
Just
we're gonna have to look at that, if we have $1 million extra, all that can't go for wages because we need some of that for utility costs that are coming.
gotta keep
Well,
the
the
bill.
jail alone was $4 more
On
for
utility,
for just the electric.
that's what
And
I'm
it's
saying.
going up in June, like Commissioner Malloy said, these rates are gonna skyrocket.
And
I mean, it's gonna be
how much
crazy.
money's left in the workers' comp insurance fund? Does anybody know the budget on that?
You can't transfer it though.
Oh, no, how much is in there?
Hold on.
You can transfer if it's extra money, though, right?
No, you cannot. It has to be workers' comp to workers' comp. Yeah, that's why it's a dedicated 926 fund. We've already asked, trust me. I just got $114,000 rebate back that I was more than willing to donate to the general fund, but guess what? I can't. So,
Well, it wasn't a rebate, it was.
well, it wasn't a rebate. It was a overpayment. The bureau charged us the wrong amount.
And one of the rate adjustments on that is for a policy year we're currently in.
That's correct. So you cannot
we haven't even
transfer.
done a true up on that reconciliation.
I agree.
Change
So
that.
what's it say?
1.849. Trust me, I already asked that question. Actually, just as of yesterday. So I was more than willing to be a team player. But unfortunately, you are restricted when funds are created for a dedicated source, you cannot just transfer out of that fund into another fund. So
They were still adjusting policy year 21 as
Yes.
part of that too.
I know it's a 10-year look back.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
We still have policy years that are on a 10-year retro.
So we may owe that money back eventually. It was there was three things. The Bureau did use the wrong table, the Bureau at the state level. Again, nothing that anything was done locally, okay? The Bureau used the wrong adjustment rates. So that was a portion of the rebate. I don't want to call it a rebate, refund. However, there was other portions as well. So, and there's something key to remember with insurance, including workers' comp. It is a 10-year look back period for workers' comp alone. That means that we could still be paying on claims from 10 years ago. It is not an easy algorithm just with the insurance premiums as well to say to you, I know it's going to be this much. It doesn't work like that. It's based off of a run loss ratio. It's based off of multiple things that I wish I had. But I was more than willing to at least try to give the general fund some monies, but can't, it's illegal. I'm not gonna do anything illegal,
So
so.
our retro payment for this year, there was 150,000 approximately.
Yeah.
That's for 10 years back.
That's right.
Well, I guess we're looking at, we're looking at this number here, and then we're looking at hopefully this ARPA being able to fund the general.
That's the big key.
And then if we get that extra million in, then we've got a lot better situation where. But, you know, to sum it all up right now, Alex had said, all the departments, if they come up with their payroll numbers through the end of the year, and let us see where we're at, we're gonna have to have another meeting with departments. And then go through these numbers.
You could
And
do,
see.
commissioners, you could do payroll and then you could, pair that up against the actual expenses to run the buildings as well, then you'll have the full picture.
I have a spreadsheet, so we'll
So-
get on it and we'll see what the percentage increase it was,
That
so,
would be.
yeah.
We'd
But
like to
those
do
two
that
things
probably
together
within the
will
next few
Yeah.
weeks.
Take you through the end of the year.
And what we can start preparing for, because we are getting the 26s in, is get a total and get a head start on what 26 is looking like for what people are requesting, so we have like an advanced notification instead of waiting till November and planning all that.
I'm sitting here just a slight bit mixed up when I'm hearing that we need to talk with departments about costs and everything. And thank you for addressing that, because we are currently plugging in our 26.
That's what I
rounds.
was afraid people were
Correct.
confused about. I agree.
And I think that we need to
I
make
agree.
sure
The
that.
site,
There's two different things
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
But by the same token, the answers that you all want are there, because that's
They are there.
exactly the process that myself and my chief deputy are
That's right.
going through right now. We've looked at our expenditures
Yep.
to this point in time, and as long as they're at 41%
Then
or
you're good.
less, because we're not at 50% of the
Right.
year, we're at 42%.
right,
As long as they're at 42% or less, then we classify it as okay. Now, there are certain items that in our budget preparations just don't work that way. I mean, there's things that we
Some you pay
buy,
upfront.
we pay up
Yeah.
front, and it's over.
right.
By the same token, when we're asking, at least in my personal opinion, when we're asking for the departments to look at these things and so forth and so on, let's please not maybe
Yeah.
go with kid gloves, maybe. I mean, let's
Be
not.
specific.
Yeah,
We
let's
just need to
not-
be specific and state, this does not have to do with your 26 budget.
Yeah.
We're asking you to do that, but that's what we've done historically, is in June, we submit our
Right.
26 preliminary budget.
Right.
But the problem is like what our staff is very small up here in the commissioner's office as well. And one thing we've never done, and I'm going to just take it to task, and I'm gonna add everything up. I'm gonna have everybody on a spreadsheet. I'm gonna see where we are for a preliminary budget for 26, but that's being separate. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, so you might want to have them, make sure that the revenue is updated too. Just because in the past, I don't think we've really worried about the revenue side too much in June. But that may be necessary, especially after you and I've gone through that
This is-
spreadsheet,
yeah,
and
this-
realized that there are some departments that aren't updating the revenue part.
There,
Some
and
of
then
those are old expectations.
Yes, everything is different, and I know people are not, they're not really realizing, and the
But they-
benefits of Munis are just tremendous, and we found this out. But a lot of departments aren't used to having to do that. A lot of departments aren't used to having to really look at their 26 preliminary budget. It's kind of just like, send that off, print it out, send it off, and that's kind of been it. And I think we need to really pay closer attention to.
Because Munis transfers the prior.
Prior year,
Those is
correct.
transfer 25 in, some have just submitted it with the 25
Correct.
budget in there.
And not really look.
It's
at-
education though, guys. I mean, and this is truly
Well,
from an HR perspective, I've sat back and watched this for the past, 2 years. Well, really just 1 year. But a lot of things have changed. This has been a moving target. Processes have changed. Elected officials have changed. We do need to figure and allow some grace. We're assuming people know how to do these things. They've never been tasked to do these things before.
Yeah.
that's why I have two
They don't-
questions in regards to that.
This is not how these processes have historically gone in this county. So I think that that's from an HR perspective, training, education. We need to be Team Trumbull County and working with one another to really get us to these places where we all understand what we need to be looking at, how we wanna be looking at it. And that starts with the Board of Commissioners, because you set the tone of what you want, right? You are the ultimate divvier up of the funds, so to speak. So I've said this past year, you guys need to tell us what you want, how to be clear, and then we can help, everybody can help educate one another. But I will be honest with you, and it was no fault of anybody else's, but I agree with Sam, and I agree with Sheriff, sending out the 2026 budget when we are nowhere near even clear on where we're at right yet in 2025. We just confused the heck out of everything. We should have said, whoa, 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 let's stop, sure up 2025. And maybe we had a little bit of time to historically push back. I know that's how we've always historically done it. But maybe we should have really waited until we, got through this, and then like I just suggested before. And then look at 2026, because we just really kind of confused people.
Well, two questions that I have for the Budget Commission. I mean, it seems like we can look at last year's figures. What gave the Budget Commission an inkling that we would be on the average down $200,000 a month in taxes? What were the forecasters?
Conservative estimate.
So we just picked a number. It wasn't anything.
I looked at what we received in the prior year and tried to be conservative with that. Now, if you look at the prior year, I think we had estimated like 31 million last year, and we did increase that based on the increase in collections. But we just never know. It's the best guess estimate.
But we
Sure, we
were
don't-
very conservative. If we budgeted 200,000 less, which is for the most part 10% less. That's pretty good. We were safe with that number. And then the other thing that I have with that is some counties like Ashtabula, they do their 26 budget in July. They don't do it in December like we're doing it. And there's many counties, I learned through CCAO, that do their 26 budget by August. It's done, and by September they're approving it for the following year. Why do we do ours? Why do we wait till the very end of the year to do it instead of the way some others do it, forecasting it further in advance?
Others, I'm just gonna start with others, and I'm just gonna say, others have county administrators who handle the budget 100%. You do not. So that's that.
Hornet County has a budget department.
They sure do. They have a budget department, they have a county administrator. The county administrator works with the budget departments and goes and does all this work that you guys have been trying to do. And I know Bill's shaking his head because I know I've researched all of this. That is the one delineating factor, commissioners. If this is how you want the process to go, you're actually the ones driving the process. So this is where we're at.
Well, the only issue is that we start hiring administrators, we start hiring, all these different entities. Gonna end up costing you, even more money. Now, I don't know if that helps us in the end, but
But to get an answer for Commissioner Malloy's question, even without a budget director, why are they doing it in July or August and we're doing it in November?
I don't believe that's statute. That's just historically how the county has done it, but that's up to you guys to decide how you want to do it.
Saying it's up to you.
Well,
guys to
my
change.
question is, where's the benefit? Where's the harm?
I think, and I'd have to double check on the statutes on this, but I think the way that this works is traditionally Trumbull County has done the temporary budget and then into the formal budget by April or whatever it is.
Yeah, but it could be.
I think, and again, I want to double check on this, but I think the statutes do allow you to function just with you can have your formal full budget done
By-
if you want to. It's.
You're the state.
Yep.
You only have to have a temporary budget if you do not pass a permanent budget by January.
By
1st.
January 1st,
Right.
right? And that's the path. There's two paths that you can take. That is realistic. Again, I've also looked into that. There's two paths. They are both correct. That's just the path that the previous board of commissioners with the auditors have chosen to take. But again, commissioners, that's your choice.
Can I point something out, please? When you do a temporary budget, it is very, very, very difficult to deal with.
It's
Yeah,
rough.
I can't
It's
stand it.
rough.
It's awful.
Very
It
rough.
is awful.
Hate temporary budget.
Well, my question is
It's double the work.
is our financial outlook better in August or is it better in January or December and January? And to me, if we started going into our budget for next year,
You're only dealing with.
how would we even know? I would think that our financial budget would be better the later on that we do it.
You can pass a permanent budget and move forward with that and then update it as the months go along. That's what a lot of our smaller local governments do. They do monthly updates and that kind of thing. They don't worry about the temporary budgets. Just because you pass something as a permanent appropriation doesn't mean that it's set in stone and you can't change it.
Yeah. Would the auditor's office or the budget commission be able to tell us how much money they expect us to have for next year in August?
We can do an estimate and then we can update it
Yeah.
once the year starts. Maybe we can make amendments, however many times we need to make amendments.
No, I understand that, but I would think that that budget would be kind of low and talk about.
Well, I think that just from the budget commission's perspective, for example, if we're talking about a permanent budget in October, November.
Yeah.
We don't have, we don't know what the sales tax looked like for the Christmas season, for example. We don't know, now again, we could go back prior 3 years, prior 5 years and probably come up with an estimate. I would just tell you, my personal take would be the further back you're relying on that data, the more conservative I want to be. Because you don't have the luxury of that newest data out there that's going to take into account perhaps the most current population of Trumbull County, the most current open stores that are in Trumbull County, retail establishments, things like that. So the further back I have to go personally, I'm gonna be viewing that with a little bit more suspicion and a little bit more caution, I guess. But again, it's not to say it can't be done. It's, there is a path forward.
Let's look at this now. I see that we're trending upward, and I think next year is gonna be better than this year. I think the year after is gonna be better. As Foxconn and Kimberly Clark are moving in those directions, as the mall is expanding. A mall doesn't expand with new stores if they're broke and the people don't have money. Our mall added 9 stores in the last 2 years. So their economists know something better than what we do, or they wouldn't keep adding these properties and these retail establishments. That results in increased sales tax for us. And I think had we known now what we knew at the beginning of the year, we've had a lot of angst and a lot of anxiety. We could have given departments more money and had less grief and less strife.
You couldn't, Commissioner.
We had 2 months at the end of last year, end of 2024, where we did not make our
Right, you
estimated
couldn't
revenue.
do that.
We didn't make that.
And remember, you can't go into a budget with less than what you have available. That was the whole problem. That's why you had to cut it to that certain.
And that's why we talked about at the budget meetings in the beginning of the year. Yes, we were being conservative and we've always been conservative. And in the past, we've used that excess amount for the small capital projects, but we don't need to use it for that. We could also use it for the general fund operations as we kind of move along and know kind of how much excess we do have for this year. As you can see, one of the months we were conservative when we got an excess of 317,000, but another month it was only 156,000. And then we had 2 months towards the end of last year where we didn't even make our estimates.
Yep.
So we just need to keep that in mind that while some months are better than others, there's going to be some that are not.
The other thing that I wanted to say too, before we get
Is
to,
that the normal trend? That the end of the year is, you have a couple months there that we don't meet.
Last year was a little bit more drastic than the 2 years preceding. If you
What?
look at it over 3 years, I believe last year was a little bit more drastic
We were
than the
surprised.
previous 2 years.
And then we also have a 2 week sales tax vacation coming up
In August.
in August.
That's normally 1 week.
How long have we been collecting taxes on Amazon? We weren't collecting that 3 or 4 years ago, were we?
I think it started during COVID.
COVID.
I wanna say during COVID,
Okay.
2021 maybe?
So say, I think.
the one thing I wanted to bring up too, when we're talking about calculations for payroll, let's also keep in mind that if we're gonna do this, say 50%, that's not always the case because a lot of departments have a 4% union increase coming in August. So, as we get these numbers together for, it's, you can work through it, but it's not gonna be as easy as 50% of the year, 50% of that fund, because the second half in a lot of places is gonna be 4% higher. Just
Yeah.
not every, I know every union's a little bit different in that.
Yeah,
but-
not everyone is.
Right.
But I can't, that was all told at the beginning of the year. as
Right.
well.
I'm thinking when it comes to that, looking at that line item of salaries, 50% or whatever, it's not gonna be exactly 50.
Right.
Doesn't that,
Does anyone think it would be beneficial to send out 2 different emails, one discussing just the 25 budget and where we currently are, and please separate that out from 26, or
Do you want to hold on the 2026?
Yes.
that would be great. I think we should, because honestly, we really need to get through this before we start on that. And then once we get that in, I'll manage it, give everyone spreadsheets on what, I'll just collect the data, plug it in and send it out to everyone. Later, down the road.
If we're up $1 million now and we go another 3 months, that gets us to the end of August. That should give us a pretty idea of where we're at. If we're up again, then we can
Right.
take probably 50% of that money, allocate it out. Okay.
Do we want to allocate any of this at this time?
I don't think so. I think because of the different areas that we need it, if we allocate it over here, we may need it over there. And I just think,
We could be
we
conservative.
hold it and just, we know we have an extra $1 million, we just don't know where we want to go with it yet. We're talking another 90 days.
But what
Should
happens
give us a
is,
decent idea. of
then
where
there
we're
are
at.
overdraws.
Well, I understand that, but if we take that $1 million and we need it over here.
No, I don't even mean a whole million. I wasn't talking, I'm just saying that would cover everybody who was short, but what I was thinking is maybe take a portion of that and give it to the departments that
How
need
much
some
do we
money.
need of that?
I would say probably half of what they're
Give us
asked
a final
us.
figure so we can know that, right?
Okay,
Well, it's gonna be hard to say with that,
Well,
with
she
the
can give
numbers
us-
from the departments, we
That's
don't know. Huh?
That's
Yeah,
what I
I
was
mean-
saying.
I mean, you
You
gotta
were putting the cart before the
Yeah,
horse.
yeah,
I'm just gonna say that.
Departments.
You have to get departments, you
If you
have
give
to.
them a little bit more, that at least maybe gets them
Yeah,
a
give
little
us-
bit
give us
closer
some
to where you
numbers
would
to
need to
work
lay
with.
somebody off if that's what they were looking for.
Right.
It pushes
That-
back that,
Just let us
pushes back
money.
that,
I just feel like if you start to go give
Yeah.
monies when you haven't, everybody needs to look at what.
That just scares me of opening up the departments, because then I can see judges then saying, well, we need a little more.
Well,
No, we don't open it up to them, we just get a figure to see where we're at.
especially if you're just looking at the
You know-
payroll line items.
Yeah.
You run
You
an
know.
expense
Right.
report that I provided.
That's
You
something
just look
you
at
know
expense.
already, yeah.
If
Something
IT
to
says,
work
look, I need another 100,000 to get me through that point, at least we know that.
Yeah.
Commissioners, you have a checks and balances now, so let me go back to what Christy was saying, this is really important to hone in on. You have a report that is provided to you with where each budget line level is down to the line level of what percentage has been spent year to date. So that will be your checks and balances, so when people come, Commissioner, to help counteract what I think you're, nervous about, which I don't disagree, that you're afraid people are gonna come and ask for more. You take that as your kind of, this is where wait a minute, you're only showing 30% expended on that line level. So how could you possibly be asking for 600,000 more, right? That's your checks and balances now. That's the good point of a 6-month review, because you have some of that past 6 months historical context to really bounce up and say, this is what percent you spent, but yet you're asking for an additional 8%. That doesn't really make sense, right? That's what you need to, that's the way that, you do what you
Yeah,
guys
but in
want,
some
but
cases, like in payroll, they're 60, 70, 80%,
that would show a problem.
right?
That would show a
That
problem.
report shows percentage by line
It
and
does.
by division.
It does. It's really nice, actually. Very nice. I gotta tell you, it was extremely helpful.
That's sent out monthly, along with, you'll be able to monitor the sales tax.
So
bill
when does
monthly
that
too,
next
because we
report come
send,
out?
at the end of June. We run them at the end of the month.
And that would be your full
And that-
6-month review. at
That's
that point.
part of, yes, that's part of the monthly reports email that I send out. It's the auditor's monthly financial statement, which looks like this. And then it's the expense and revenue summaries. It's similar to this. This is sorted by percentage of amount received. But when we send them out in an email, it's by division. But you can sort it, it's an Excel, you can sort it any way you want. And then also that sales tax summary is attached to that too. So there's usually 4 reports attached to it. And I do,
Do we want
I
to
think
keep that
positive
extra
one.
million in the general fund, or do we want to put that somewhere else?
This actually that we're seeing right now, I guess leave it where it is, leave it in the general fund. We're not gonna spend it.
everything gets approved anyway. The auditor's office has to approve anything that is an overdraw.
I have not been. No, we've been looking at them, but
No.
we don't approve them until they transfer the budget. We're being very cautious this year. In years past, we've kind of let these go and they would be fixed in the future, but we're nervous about that. So we have told the departments, if you have an over budget, that it needs to go into budget transfers and amendment before we'll approve it. And then it comes to you guys at the next meeting for approval, once we post it. The budget.
I would love,
Budgets are only usually around they're 2 weeks. Just wait.
Us, like, it's hard to say, I mean, like I said twice already, with payroll and IT. The IT stuff, most of my operating stuff comes towards the second half of the year. That's when we get some big expenses with regular maintenance contracts and things like that. We're gonna start digging through those. We should start getting those numbers here soon and cut whatever the heck we can. My big concern, to be honest, is that payroll. I don't wanna have to go to anybody and say, look, we have to cut hours, we have to start furlough, we have to start layoffs. I don't wanna do that. If, we probably need to focus, like we've been talking about, on that payroll number right now. Okay, my operating costs, yeah, I'm gonna come back to you with my operating, say, look, fully funded, it's this. You're gonna tell me it's X, I'm gonna say, all right, let's see what the heck I can do. That's it. But if that payroll is, that's a huge concern for us right now.
You talking payroll for IT or payroll
Pay
for?
for the entire audit department, because it's all one big bucket. It's
So
an
what
entire
percentage are
office.
you guys at now for
It-
the auditor's payroll?
We vary, it's different departments, we vary between 40,
It was,
It was,
46 and 50 some percent.
yeah,
We should be at 42.
it was clear, but when we look at that report, you will see what areas are trending in the red. I went through and kind of dotted all of them for every single department, and I can tell you right now, utilities, I would concur with Shara. Utilities are beyond it. Some were already expended at 70%, 80%. That was the biggest red flag for me, was that. Then the second red flag was getting into the employment lines for sure. And you can see, well, I take that back. The first red flag was the utilities. The second red flag was the monies for maintenance, specifically in the jail. And I mean, that's already, that's gone. We're damn near gone. I'm just gonna be honest with you. So
That's for maintenance of the jail.
well, maintenance, yeah, so like maintenance to service your county buildings, but the jail is my number one concern always, because that's a 24/7 operation, and if we can't, maintain that jail, we're gonna have some issues, we know that. So I looked at that, and then the last but not least, again, I'm not saying payroll is not a concern, but the payroll numbers were trending, some of them, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, but I didn't see that many just yet that were well above the 50, which was a good sign to me, but yet again, not a good sign, because it wasn't the full 6-month review yet. It was only when we reviewed it through May, yes, through May.
Could a little bit of the bump be because of the longevity pay?
It could, that's a really good question. It could be longevity, it could be vacation and overs, cash out, it could be any of those things.
But they're supposed to put that.
But they
in.
should.
Well, no,
Right.
but it is in our budgets, but what I'm getting to is it might make you
Skew it a little bit.
nervous.
Yeah,
Could
yeah,
skew your
yeah.
number that
I agree.
I said you should be around
Yes.
42 and you
Yeah.
could be at 48, but you have to take into consideration that Sam
Yes.
didn't mention that
Right.
there's
I absolutely agree.
the longevity pays and
True.
involved in
Yep.
that.
So it would skew it slightly, to your point. And skews it more for departments like the sheriff's office who have more
Well,
staff,
the-
right, versus.
The bigger,
a
I mean,
smaller.
I'm only looking at a 9, but I see it happen on a scale of 9, so
It's a good
if you
point.
got 450, it has to
Absolutely.
happen there as
I agree, and
well.
like Bill said earlier, we can't take into account unexpected retirements. I mean, those cash outs, guys, are huge potentially at times, right? We know that. So there's just so many, you're right, there's just so many kind of little nuances that we can't plan for, but at least we can at least be pretty darn accurate.
Oh, no,
It might
I
be off a little
wholeheartedly
bit,
agree.
but we can get pretty close.
Yeah.
Truly. And I mean, that's just how, for what it's worth, every single month I go into my budget and I look at where I'm at, how much I've expended. I mean,
We're doing that right now with, as we're meeting with our union, and we're doing we have payroll account update and we have non-payroll accounts update. We are trying the best we can, we paid workers' comp premiums, so we, it's part of what you guys
Transfer
transfer
that,
that more is transferring our workers' comp into other payroll accounts to kind of help alleviate that. You know, we've looked at our postage and made some adjustments, you know, we no longer pay for the postage for all the departments. We're only paying for the postage for our department going through accounts renewal, so we're able to use that budget to go to our payroll accounts. Like every like cut they're making is we're transferring budget to our payroll accounts right now. And we're looking at it bi-weekly is we're meeting.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, to sum this up, let's get those reports. And then we could, commissioners, we can look at all that. We can have you know, a better view of where we're at. Hopefully by then we know about the additional million. We know we got a little bit over here for the past,
Well, we know we have a million.
we got a
We
million.
just gotta figure out how we're gonna spend it.
Well, I mean, the other, well, I mean, hopefully, you know, by the time we could.
Hopefully that million turns into 3 million, it doesn't go down to 100,000
That's always
by the
the
end of the
hope.
day.
It's always the hope.
Yeah.
Well,
if we could-
wouldn't think
if
that
we
that's,
could get up another
but I mean, it'll
500,000,
have access, we just don't know how much that access is going to be, and we're makes a lot of fun, but.
Well,
The next 3 months.
Remember too, you
The
got
next
that,
3 months are critical.
that extra 1 week tax holiday too that you're popping on.
August is gonna be,
I mean,
August is something you wanna keep an eye out on, because again, it's going from 1 week tax free to 2
how
weeks
big
tax free.
idea that is.
And they
Also-
do used to, they do say we get some
Yeah.
additional, but
Used to
last
steal.
year for the tax holiday, we got $15,000 and we did not receive it until this year. So we didn't even receive it in the year that,
Oh
no,
my
we received it,
gosh.
we received it, yeah,
Well, that's not very
A
helpful, huh?
weekend.
it was 2 weeks now.
I
It's
know,
two
it used to be
yeah.
2 days.
Right.
Well, it went from like 2 days to like a
Well, until the
weekend, to
government
like a
gave all
week
that
to like.
They-
a-
I'll tell you, the state,
Yeah.
state politicians do everything in the world they can do to get themselves reelected, but screwing everybody else.
And remember too, commissioners, not that, like, I know, but you'd be surprised, and it's about education too. That's not just like shopping, that's food as well. That's when you go out to eat. You're not getting the sales tax on all of that. Like, it's more than what, it's more than what we even realize sometimes, you know?
Yeah, but the good thing is, it's what, 500 and under, it's not
Yeah,
anything.
that's-
Yeah, thank God.
That's the good thing, I mean, if you buy a new car.
That's true. That's true. You're still getting,
Yeah, we still get that, so
Yeah,
everybody go out and buy a new car.
I used,
It doesn't matter,
pre-owned.
doesn't matter what you buy, you pay taxes. I think that what's important for us, you gotta find out about that ARP.
Yes.
That's crucial, because right now, and that's something I was just gonna bring up too. We should be looking at another special meeting on that, just that, and go by every dollar that was spent from the very beginning, to all 38 million. And see how much was spent, who we wrote checks to, who we're waiting to, because that question came up a couple weeks ago. You know, like some of the things like the 4-H building, that was appropriated before I was even here, but we didn't write the check for it all because it wasn't built yet. You know, it wasn't all the way done yet. There are things out there that are pending that if we don't keep track of if the money's coming back or not, we're not gonna know. And we have to be a hawk on that. You have to report that. They're supposed to report it to us. There may be 5 million left of that by the time we're done. We don't know.
I don't know, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's not gonna be that quiet, it won't be that.
I'll sell it for 2 million. I'll
2
take
million.
I know, but there's money we appropriated for certain things there that I know we have not written the checks for or came in under what they were. And that there were a lot of 112 requests or whatever it was. That's a lot.
We just need to find out if we can use that money. And if we spend it, you know,
We need to talk to Columbiana's person.
Yes.
That
I'm gonna
would be-
put you in touch with him when we leave here
Okay,
today.
cause that would be super beneficial.
yeah, but that doesn't mean it's right though.
I'll check it out.
I mean,
Yeah,
we
they
all-
get lawyers that tell them it's
Yeah, but
right.
we all know Mike, I mean, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
Do we
Yeah,
have?
not necessarily just him.
Yeah.
No, we'll look at it. We'll-
I mean,
Bill's down there.
when I was in DC, when we were at the National Association of Counties, every county was talking about that, and everyone kind of laughed when I brought it up, like, what are you bringing it up for? Here's how it's done,
I mean, we just need,
and the treasury guy was right there.
yeah, we need
With
to
a
start
smartphone.
calling.
Are we okay, are we okay now? Should we have a motion?
A motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Oh, we'll send an email. We're gonna ask all the departments we'll send it to the appropriate people. We are asking for an update on their 25 budget.
Are you going to send something to them to tell them that we're holding off on the 26th?
Yes.
Documents?
Yes.
I
Yes.
think we're gonna make that's due next Friday, so they might be working on that now.
Well, we have.
Yeah,
the
they're,
extended date.
I think they're
But
just
don't
printing
you
it out
think
later.
like
It's just
they
taking
come
longer.
on.
Tim, Christie. Sam, thank you, Bill, for,
I don't.
we can't do this
Give it to us.
with half the formula.
So nice to have you here.
Thank you guys very
Okay,
much.
might
These
need that
reports
for
are very helpful, Chris. Thank you.
The one we're gonna go on his way, where it keeps us in.
Mr. Malloy.
Yeah, their association.
I just.